Hi, everyone, and welcome back to part 2, identifying the type of issues. So by the end of this lecture, you should be able to list the 3 types of issues. You should be able to read an issue and explain in writing what kind of issue it is. So let's go to the review. Let's review our last lecture. We started with the 3 parts of an argument. We're currently on the first part of an argument, issues. Then is conclusions, and finally, reasons. What we learned was that issues are the questions being discussed. So now that we know that, we're going to go into the types of issues. There are 3 kinds of issues. The first one, value issue, also known as prescriptive. You will find these all on page 6 of your text. Factual issue, descriptive or definitional. And the last one, a policy issue, which is an action. So let's talk about these in depth. The first one, value issue, which is also called prescriptive, it is important that we connect these two. So the way I do it is I think of prescriptive, and it sounds like prescription. So when a doctor prescribes something to you, it is personal. It's only medicine that you are to take. You're not to share it. You're not to give it out, because your reaction to it might be different than someone else's. So a value issue is how we personally take things, what we consider to be good or bad, right and wrong, based on our own values. So when we look at a value or a prescriptive issue, we're going to look at questions that will talk about good or bad. Is there too much violence on television? The key term there is too much. What might be too much for you might not be too much for me. So when we think about that, I think about the cartoons, and someone who might think that, yeah, it's not too much. We'll see this cartoon and say, yeah, that's just a cartoon. It's funny. Kids enjoy it. No one's going to believe that a mouse can really hit a cat with a hammer. But those who think it is too much would say, yes, television, there is too much violence on television. Look at our cartoons. Even our cartoons are violent. So it's really about our own value system. They also talk about issues as right or wrong. Are salaries of executives of major corporations too high? Well, if I think that, there's nothing wrong with their salaries, I'm going to think, no, they're not too high. They're perfect. They should be able to, get however much money they earn, and they should be able to get, bonuses in the millions. That's not a problem. They work hard. If I think that, no, that's not right, then I'm going to say, yeah, the salaries of executive major corporations are way too high. They don't do much, and they're getting billions of dollars. They get to travel in this private jets. They're wasting money. Many other reasons I can give you, but it's really based on my own personal values of good or bad or right and wrong. Our next issue is called the factual issue, and it's also known as descriptive or definitions. So when we look at these issues, they're going to have to be proven or fall into certain categories. So let's look at the type of questions that would fall into descriptive. They're going to ask you about true or false. So questions such as, are small control devices effective in preventing pollution? That has to do with, it doesn't have to do with your own values or beliefs. It's actually something we can prove. We can go and look up statistics and the science behind it and see if, are small control devices effective in preventing pollution? Well, we use a lot of statistics and graphics on here. Here we have this emissions test, and boom, we have all the reduction in pollution. They also have to do with definitions. So besides asking if it's true and false, they might also ask you, does it fit in a certain category? For example, earlier I showed you a picture of a platypus. And then the issue is a platypus a mammal? Well, it has to fit in a certain category for it to be true or false, or yes or no. The platypus, found only in Australia, is one of 5 mammal species. So then I have to look up the category of a mammal species. What does it mean to be a mammal? And then see if the platypus fits that category. So factual issues, descriptive or definition, I like this because they both start with D's, have to do with the facts, something that you can prove from science or categories, and when you answer them. So let's go to the next type of issue, our final one, and also the most complicated of all, is the policy issue. The policy issue asks for an action to be taken. So the reason why this becomes complicated is because the policy issue involves an action, but it can come from facts and it can also come from values. So small control devices prevent pollution. Well, that's a fact. We can look at statistics and prove it. We can look at the science. But clean air should be available to everyone. Well, that's a value. So when we ask these questions of so should we implement small control devices or smog emissions testing for our vehicles in our states, that question, that issue, becomes a policy issue. By the end, we will have to take some action. We're going to either change the laws or change the rules. That is it for issues. Those are the 3 types of issues. And now I want to give you a quick little quiz and see if you got this. So name that issue. Is there too much violence on television? What type of issue is this and why? If you said a value issue, you're right. The key words there are too much. What is too much for you might be different for someone else. Are seatbelts effective in preventing injury? That's a descriptive factual issue. We can look, and then the why, this is the important part, because we can look at the science, the statistics. We can look at accident reports and see how many people who were wearing their seatbelts compared to those who were not wearing their seatbelts, which ones had more injury. Is a dolphin a mammal? Well, that's a definition factual issue. So both of these are factual, but this one's a definition because it has to fit a certain category. The last one, will installing smog control devices prevent pollution? So right there, I want you to think about it. Will installing smog control devices prevent pollution? So we know that's a descriptive factual issue, but it's also a policy issue because after we do the science, we're going to have to, it's calling for, we're not going to have to, but it's calling for an action. If we know that this is going to prevent pollution, then we should change the law. We should implement it somehow. So that is the conclusion of this lecture. And what is next? For the next lecture is the last 2 components of an argument. Conclusion and reasons. So can't wait for you to stay tuned, and whenever you're ready, go ahead and start watching the next lecture.